Isn't that beautiful?
Yes, yes, that's right.
It's just, and that's the story. That's the story that we're invited to live. And I think, during this time of the coronavirus, when people are so afraid, and we have those first responders who are with masks and shields and gloves, but reaching out and companioning people in their suffering and their sickness when their families can't be there. We don't know if, forget about when, we don't know if this is going to come to an end. So I think that our call is now to act with kindness and compassion and mercy in any way that we can. I think wearing a mask, that's part of the compassion, so that people aren't afraid, that they aren't afraid to come near us. So if that's what the professionals are saying, do it. Do it. Kids are going back to school. I have a great nephew, and he just started kindergarten. And they took him to see his new school. He's in there, and he's with my sister. My sister's his grandmother. And he calls her Mima. And he says, Mima, come here. She goes over, and he whispers, can we get out of here? I'm sweating with this mask on. So he's 5 years old, and he's sweating. And then that was probably, 3 or 4 days before school actually started. And then it's the first day of school, which is now over a week ago. And he says to Mima, I'm just telling you, if my face gets really sweaty, I'm walking home. Okay? Mind you, he's about, 15 miles from his school. But we have to teach our children that why we're doing what we're doing, and help them to get through it. But we have to be, and I have to say this, please be very careful about your language and the subject matter that you talk about in front of your kids. I know, particularly now, so many people have been home all the time. Some of us use language that is inappropriate, bad words, and the kids pick it up, and then we try to yell at them for using words that we use. All right, we can't do that. We can't. We have to. And I always think, like, I go back to when I was actually teaching, and it was usually around the end of 5th grade, beginning of 6th, where kids would start thinking that if they said bad words, they were cool. And so that instead of they saying, what the heck, you'd hear a kid slip in, what the hell? And then everybody look at him, and he'd think, oh yeah, I am so it, And so when I talk with kids, I say, if you need to use bad words to be cool, you're pretty pathetic. And yet, there are still people who are grown-ups using bad language. All right, first of all, it's called bad language. Why? Oh, because it's bad. Okay, those kind of words, why would you let them come out of your mouth? Why? What is the point of using curse words? And some people use them all the time. They're not even mad. It's just their vocabulary. Change your vocabulary. Change your vocabulary. And I'm not saying only in front of kids. Think of your own dignity as a man, as a woman, as a child of God. Come on. But particularly when you're in front of young people, little children, big children. Because what you're doing is you're giving them permission. If you use bad language, then they're like, oh, well, they do it, I can do it. You know, or else they're going to think that, oh, when I get big, I can do that.
It's a tough lesson, sister, because most of the television shows today on cable television, and even channels which you would think are conservative, the hosts and the actors and the people on these shows are using words that, you know, curse words, as if that is a normal part of language. And it's really hard for a parent to stress that that's not when, you know, you're watching they're all reality shows now, I guess.
Oh, that's, yeah.
You know, all of them. Everything you watch is a reality show now. But, I mean, you could be watching a home improvement show or something like that. They're still pretty good. But there's a couple of them out there that are just... They're...
Well, it's funny. It's a funny thing because...
Whatever happened to, you know, remember they used to have that censorship
There
board?
was censorship. There was the Legion of Decency or something like that.
You could only say certain things, you know, up to a certain point, and then you cross the line, and
Right.
then they would find the network and things.
And they don't do that.
There's no more of that.
No, there is not.
Because
Because of freedom of speech.
Well,
but that freedom of speech, okay, so I find that kind of speech offensive. So where is my freedom of not to have that? But it's funny because I would say...
Their answer to you is change the channel, right?
Right. But no matter what, like, it's funny. I've certainly
many times
watched more television during this coronavirus thing. And some of the subject matter, like, or they do double meaning things.
Commercials.
Yeah, even the commercials
are the worst. Kathy and I were talking last night. We were watching. I don't know if it was right after the news. I don't remember what program it was, but and the commercials. The commercials just they have that double standard, you know, as far as lifestyles and things like that, and it's very difficult. I have a 13-year-old granddaughter that, you know, she thinks all this stuff is normal, and we talk about it, but I think it's a losing battle. You know, not that I'm not going to stop, but I think it's a losing battle because society, especially when it comes to media, and everybody's so buried in media. Social media, you know, the media on television, the explicit lyrics and the songs that are out now.
Yes.
The songs that are out now that are so suggestive, especially the young ladies, are absolutely terrible. Yes. And I'm not by any means a prude.
No.
You know, but
I'm probably more prudish than you are,
there's you know, there's a time and place for things.
Well, there isn't. Let me interrupt you. There's no time and no place for some of the stuff that they're presenting.
Right, you're right.
It's very bad.
You're right.
It's.
But I mean, they used to have things that were considered to be adult content. Not that anybody should, you know, partake in them, but they had their own category of this is something that you knew was not for young people who are influenced greatly by the people that the stars, their so-called heroes, and today it's terrible. And it's just getting worse and worse and worse, and you can't say anything. I do, but you can't say anything because you're always wrong. So it's very difficult for parents. But don't give up. Don't give up. I have discussions with them all the time. I don't see them as often as I like to, but when I do, we have discussions about things like that, and it's very difficult.
No, and I think that what you're saying is so true, and as difficult as it is, we have to not give up. We have to not stop. We have to continue to speak the truth, you know, in good times or in bad, you know, when it's convenient or inconvenient. St. Paul says that in one of his letters, you know, like, because it's true. It's overwhelming, and you kind of think, I'm fighting a losing battle here. And perhaps you are. But continue to fight. We have to continue to fight. We have to continue
Well,
to
yeah,
fight.
because it that in itself shows those who are young and impressionable that it's something that's important to you. And if they have any feelings for you, even though they may be teenagers and think you're full of baloney and don't know anything, at some point in their life they'll remember that how important it was to you.
Please God.
To continue to, try to show them that this is not the way things should be.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully that will sink in. I know it has with our children. Our children have come around the whole full circle. But now we have the grandchildren who, they're driving their parents crazy. Used to say the mother's curse, but,
Yeah.
But
that's true. And I think that we need to make a choice. Like, y'all know, you know when you're sucked into something that's not right. And so make the choice and talk about it. Please talk to your kids. Please tell them. We don't use that kind of language. And if their friends are over your house and they are using language that you don't use, you simply say, we don't use that kind of language in this house. All right? That's it. And honestly, I know things have changed an awful lot. Like when we were kids, we would never have answered back an adult. Never. Not in a million years. And when we would be, we lived on Hazel Street in Tamaqua, and a very funny thing is that so I'm one of 6 kids, right? And all of us had our friends and all that kind of stuff. And my nieces and nephews, okay, have met some of our friends, either at weddings or whatever. And they were like, oh yeah, that's somebody who we grew up on Hazel Street. And that's somebody else from Hazel Street. And that's somebody else from Hazel Street. And finally, one of those kids, one of the nieces or nephews said, how big was Hazel Street? It was only 2 blocks. We just had lots of kids. And, but those people who we grew up with, I'm not saying we all ended up, saints or anything like that. But we grew up where their parents would yell at us, my parents would yell at them, and so everybody was looking out. And this is a strange person for me to be quoting, trust me, but remember Hillary Clinton, I think she wrote that book, It Takes a Whole Village to Raise a Child. That's not her saying, though. That saying is, I forget whose saying it is. But the truth is, it does take a whole village to raise a child. And that village is your family, it's the people and so you adults, you have to make choices about the people who you hang out with, about the activities that you dedicate your time to. Because your kids are learning from you. They're learning from watching you. They're going to follow your example. They're going to do what you do. So if
you're indifferent, they're going to be indifferent.
Exactly.
I think today, one of the big problems is, first of all, people are afraid to show their beliefs, their morals, their values, because they're just afraid that, society's going to knock them down. And it has knocked many people down. And the other thing is, people are afraid to stand up for their rights. They're afraid to say, this is my home, and these are my rights, and you are my children, and you don't have any rights, and so you become the owner of your own home.
Right,
exactly. You know what I'm getting
right,
at.
We're not talking abuse in any way, shape, or form.
In a stern way, but a loving way. But I think people are afraid to stand up for their rights, and let's face it, so many of our rights have just been, taken away from us. Like you said, what about my right to turn the television on and watch something that's clean and entertaining and maybe has a moral or a life lesson in it, rather than watching something where, it's just demoralizing.
Exactly, demoralizing.
Yeah.
And I hate to say this, but I think there are people who who are the grown-ups now, my generation, our generation, the next generation, who somehow are still hung up on being cool.
Yeah.
They still want to be cool. All right, being cool doesn't do anything. It doesn't.
Well,
who makes the rules about that?
Again, I'm going to throw that back to social media. You know, so many people are known on social media because you hide behind a screen. When you're face to face with someone, it's hard to say, I don't like you, I think you're this, or I think you're that, and from your heart, but I love you, and I'm not, but on social media, it's so easy to hide behind. And then you get groups of people who either agree with you or disagree with you. Mm-hmm. So it's either easy to bully or be bullied. Mm-hmm. And there's so many people, everybody wants to stand out on social media. You have your own little icons, you have your own little things that all across there. So they're all things to make you look good. And that's why social media is such a popular platform, because everybody feels important. So I think people don't have that feeling of what can I do? I'm to stand up and make a difference.
Yeah, and even their sense of truth.
Yeah.
And good and right. Like, I think the challenge is you have to make a choice, not one choice, but you have to make a choice every day, sometimes several times a day, sometimes several times in 1 hour, to remember who you are. Like, I just keep thinking of our dignity as children of God. We are, whether you like it or not. Like, I always love this when people say, oh, you know what, I don't really believe in God. And I go, that's okay. He knows exactly who you are. I mean, there are, one of my sisters, just was down in the Outer Banks for a week of vacation. And they were walking the beach one morning. And this whole, I know they're not called a flock. Give me a second. I guess a herd of wild horses. Are they called a herd?
I would imagine.
A group, whatever it is. Bunch of wild horses. And she happened to have her camera, and she took a picture. And I don't even know what word to use, but beauty, certainly. It was overwhelming. And I'm like, how could you ever look at that? These are horses that nobody takes care of. God takes care of them. But like, how could, and the sun was right. I mean, it was really gorgeous picture. And so I think, how could you see that and not know that there is a God?
It's true. I was looking just earlier today, looking through our rather big book of songs that music that we do in church, and I came across one, and it speaks of that same thing, the Canticle of the Sun.
Oh yeah.
Such a beautiful song that talks about nature and how God is present. And I love that song.
Yeah. Yes.
Because it puts a realization into your mind. Those moral life lessons.
Right.
And it talks just about what you're talking about.
Right. Just recognizing, knowing, believing. Like, right now, okay, in the Catholic Church, as we all know, we have a responsibility to keep holy the Sabbath. But that's not a Catholic thing. That's one of the 10 Commandments. That's a Jewish thing, actually. Okay? But we know that we are to go to Mass every Sunday or every Saturday night. But right now, a dispensation has been given because of the coronavirus and the situation that we're living. At one point, our churches were shut down, and you heard in that story the leper saying, I couldn't go to the synagogue. I couldn't go to the synagogue, okay? We were unable to go to our churches. That was very difficult for me. I told you a little bit earlier, 46 years ago, I started going to daily Mass. And then for I don't know how many months, I was unable to go to daily Mass. And that was very difficult for me. All right? And now, I watched it on the computer every day. And we were blessed because I live in a convent, we have a chapel, and we have the Blessed Sacrament. So we were able to actually receive Holy Communion. Again, a dispensation, a special permission. But it wasn't the same as going to Mass every day. And as soon as Mass started, as soon as daily Mass started, then we were back and going to Mass every day. And so, like now, I have to say, there's a concern with so many of us, because now you have the opportunity to go back. Now, I know the pews are roped off and all that kind of stuff. But there are people who very well could go to Mass, and you're not going. And I know that some of you aren't going because it's much more comfortable to be in your jammies. I don't know.
And it's very easy to fall back on, but there's a dispensation, because it still exists. But I believe that if you are capable, just very quickly, because we're actually running out of time here.
Okay.
My father-in-law, who was very sick, never, ever, ever missed Mass. It didn't matter if he went to the hospital after he left Mass because he was sick. He never missed Mass. And not because it was just like, well, I have to go to. It was because he just had that love and that yearning to be there, to be in the presence of God, and to receive the living God within him.
Right.
And we always try to use that example in our own lives, and make sure there's no excuse.
Right, exactly. Well,
really,
I join you in that. My own father.
Right.
My own father had his leg amputated, and this is one of the things that I tell about him. Our parish was St. Jerome's Parish in Tamaqua, which is now joined to St. Peter and Paul. So there used to be two churches in Tamaqua, St. Jerome's and St. Pete's. St. Jerome's is closed, completely closed now. But an elevator was put in eventually. But at the time that my father had his leg amputated, there was no elevator. All right? To go into St. Jerome's Church, I would say easy 30 steps. It's up, like St. Jerome's was built in, towards a mountain. And so St. Pete's Church only has 3 steps. So I always used to say, if they cut off my leg, I'm going to St. Pete's. I don't care, But my dad, he continued to go to St. Jerome's. And he didn't miss Mass. It was just now very funny. Okay, I already said, I'm one of 6 kids. 9:00 a.m. back in the day was the children's Mass. And so my mother had 6 children. My father was a bachelor. Okay, my mom, 9:00 Mass, we were late. I think we were late every single Sunday because there's 6 of us, right? Okay, but eventually we'd pile in the car and we'd get to church. And then my dad went to the 10:15. Okay, and St. Jerome's was where my mom grew up. That was her home parish. That's where she was baptized. That's where we all were baptized. And I can remember sitting in the pews in that church thinking, I wonder if my grandmother ever sat here. I never met my Irish grandmother. That would have been Anna Murphy. I never met my Irish grandfather. That would have been Patrick Murphy. I never met them. And so I would sit in those pews thinking, I wonder if they ever sat here. Or I wonder if my mom sat here when she was in grade school. My mom was the May Queen. It was just to have that kind of connection. So what are you giving? What are you giving your children? What are you giving them that has lasting value? Make the time. Read something that's worth reading. Read a story of the saints. Read a little bit of the Bible. Talk about it. I'm going to try to remember next time I have these 2 papers that I made up I gave some kind of workshop, whatever. But it talks about how to kind of pass on the faith to your children, different things that we can do. For example, my birthday is July 11th, and my baptism day is July 29th, the Feast of St. Martha. So I know the day I was baptized. So what I recommend is that people find out what was the day, because I bet most people don't know, but it's written down somewhere, okay? But on the day that your child was baptized, just light a candle that night at dinner to remind y'all that you are children of God, and that on this day, that child became a child of God. Like, it's really simple stuff, but important things to remember that we are loved by God. We are children of God. We belong to God.
And we're a family of God together.
Exactly.
And that's why we need to stick together. We need to raise the standards of the life that we live now, and perhaps pass that on to our children as well.
For sure.
Would you like to close us off here, sister?
I will like to close us off. This went fast anyway, didn't it?
Fast.
That's me, because I talk so much. Sorry about that. So let's just, on Saturday will be the Feast of the Holy Name of Mary. So Mary's birthday, September 8th, yesterday. Okay, and then 4 days later, they call it Mary's name day, the day that they gave her the name Mary. I imagine they called her Mary on the 8th, in fact, but who knows? But
and then is it the next week is Our Lady of Sorrows?
Our Lady of Sorrows is the 15th,
Yeah.
exactly. So we have this mother, this wonderful mother who takes care of us, and so we ask her to guide us during these challenging days. And then I'm going to end with a song, a hymn. It's a prayer of St. Teresa of Avila, reminding us that we are called to be that other Christ, which I started out with in the very beginning. And it just says, Christ has no body but yours, no hands, no feet on earth but yours. And so we are called to be that living Christ in our world today. Christ has no body now but yours, no hands, no feet on earth but yours. Yours are the eyes with which he looks, compassion on this world. Yours are the feet with which he walks to do good. Yours are the hands with which he blesses all the world. Yours are the hands, yours are the feet, yours are the eyes, you are his body. Christ has no body now but yours, no hands, no feet on earth but yours. Yours are the eyes with which he looks, compassion on this world. Christ has no body now on earth but yours. May we be the body of Christ, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. And then just a reminder, the Missionary Sisters of the Sacred Heart, normally we have the Nun Run. Remember, we have the Nun Run? Okay, so it's virtual this year. We're asking people to run wherever you are, and perhaps if you have the ability to send in a donation on behalf of yourself, on behalf of anybody, because we have been unable to do any of our normal fundraising things, and we still have sisters in the missions who are very much in need. So thank you, everybody.
And
good night.
where could they send a donation if they're so interested?
Actually, you can check on at the website, which is www.mscreading. It's spelled reading, READING, www.mscreading.org. Okay, and we'd be most grateful. Or you know what? Even you can just get in touch with here with Catholic FM Radio, and even if it comes through Bill, just say it's for the sisters, and we'll get it. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Thank you, sister.